Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first webinar for 2026 Zippo. We did a bunch of these last year, I think 10 in total, didn't we? And they're all available on the eShepherd Help Centre, but wonderful to have you here and exciting times in the virtual fencing space. There's absolutely so much happening at the moment. We've got a bunch of new team members, which I'll introduce shortly. And there's plenty of new things to talk about. So quick run through on today. So we'll meet the team, we'll talk about legislation and where that's at in Australia. And we're going to have a customer come and join us today, Grant Lewin, a little bit later in the webinar, talking about his experience and his journey for eShepherd, and also talking about a case study of where someone's been using eShepherd for a good couple of years and some of the experiences that they're seeing on their property. If anyone's got a question throughout the webinar, please put that in the chat and we will have a Q&A session towards the middle of the webinar, and we've left a good amount of time to discuss and answer any of your questions. So firstly, I would just like to introduce the team. So as some of you know, I've sort of been battling away here on my own up until about the middle of last year, and then we've had a couple of new team members join us here in Australia. So first of all, Meg Hillard. Meg, welcome to the team today and your first webinar for 2026 as well. Meg's based in the eastern part of Australia in Wauchope and looks after customers in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria. So great to have you here, Meg. Meg's got a great history in agriculture. Previously ran a rural retail store, so she's got a really great knowledge base about the industry and working with beef producers every day. It's exciting. And also Tom Charteris. So welcome, Tom. Thanks for joining us, mate. I believe you've had a few dramas with planes and trying to get to Esperance and WA, but Tom's based in Perth and looks after the Perth, Northern Territory and South Australian regions. And Tom's previously worked for a Wagyu supply chain company. So great to have Tom aboard as well, helping our customers in the West. We've also got Heidi Barnier. So Heidi's our customer success representative. Heidi's based in northern New South Wales and comes from a very strong dairy background and looks after our customers once the onboarding process starts. So great to have you aboard, Heidi, and we really appreciate the help and all the great work that you're doing with our customers and supporting them in their journey. Also got Caitlin Barnett, regional lead Australasia. So Caitlin is based in the North Island of New Zealand and is here to help us all grow the business and help our customers on their eShepherd journey. So Caitlin comes from a livestock background as well, and essentially that is the eShepherd team. We've also got Zippo. Many of you know Zippo from previous webinars. Zippo is based in our Melbourne office, which is our global head office, and Zippo is doing a really great job creating content for our training platform to make sure that customers have all the tools and resources they need at their fingertips, and also highlighting and bringing to light new features that we're rolling out across the eShepherd platform. So you'll be hearing from Zippo today. What's really cool about Zippo, his son has actually joined us and been doing some really great work in the background as well. So we've got Zippo and Zippy, which is quite a catch. So yeah, very much a family business, true to the word. So anyway, we'll kick off now. So I'm going to hand over to Meg, and Meg's just going to provide a bit of an update on the legislation in New South Wales and abroad.
No worries. Thanks, Mark. So as you all know, virtual fencing is gathering significant momentum across Australia. And one of the most common questions we get asked is which states we can purchase eShepherd and use eShepherd in. So currently, eShepherd can be used commercially, used in several Australian states and territories. These do include Queensland, New South Wales, Western Australia, Tasmania, and Northern Territory. So these producers are already adopted virtual fencing and managing grazing, reduced labour, and improved pasture utilisation. But more recently, Victoria and South Australia has approved virtual fencing regulations, allowing the technology to be used commercially from late 2025 under specific animal welfare guidelines. However, we are waiting on both governments in Victoria in particular and South Australia to become an approved supplier of virtual fencing in the state. And I will be reaching out to our Victorian people that we've already been in contact with and had discussions with to explain this in a little bit more detail later. So as regulations continue to evolve, virtual fencing is quickly becoming one of the most exciting technologies in Australian agriculture. And with eShepherd leading the way, more Australian producers are beginning to manage their cattle directly from their phones, which is really exciting. So I will pass you back on to Mark.
Excellent. Thank you, Meg. And yes, very exciting. And I guess we spent many months last year talking to New South Wales customers into the lead up to the approval being live in New South Wales, and we've had massive uptake through that period from Christmas through till now. We've got many customers that have been on board probably 3 or 4 months now, so which is really great to see. All right, excellent. Now, Zippo, there has been a ton of stuff happening in the background. We've got a massive development team based in Melbourne and some in New Zealand as well, and these guys have been working really hard. What's really great about eShepherd is that all the customer feedback that we get from current customers and even new customers, we feed that back into the development team, right? So your feedback is super important for us because it really shapes how we develop the product. The really great thing about a wearable like eShepherd is, yes, the hardware is the same and will be for the life of that neckband, but essentially we can continually add value to you guys as growers because we can manipulate the software, we can add new features, and that is something that seems to be speeding up at a rapid rate of knots. So Zippo is going to run us through some of the new features that have been developed in the software, and I'll hand over to you now, Zippo.
Okay. Yes, so there've been quite a number of things that customers have been asking for a while, and we've been responding to. One of the most significant ones has been that a virtual fence change has traditionally can take a period of time to move from one virtual paddock to the next virtual paddock. Especially for areas where the communication with those neckbands can be a little bit difficult, which is in many rural places, right? So we totally understand that challenge, and we've been responding by introducing some new features. And one of those features is what we call offline scheduling. And this is where the neckbands will become preloaded with the next virtual fence that we want to add in a rotation. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to use a demo property to demonstrate this or show how that principle works. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see my screen okay and can see some of the animals that we have. Excellent. So the idea here, I'll just mention quickly, this is a demo property and gets used for all sorts of different demonstrations. So ignore the fact that there's a bunch of virtual fences that are scattered around on the screen here. We'll focus on just the few animals in this area here. And there's even a little bit of a mess going on at the moment with some of the colors of some of these animals, but that's okay. So we've got a group of animals in this part of the paddock, and we've got an active virtual fence shown as this solid orange line here. And we've got a dotted orange line here to show that this virtual fence will be extended at a certain time to this region here to allocate this fresh bit of pasture to the animals. So the virtual fencing platform now can preload the geometry of this next virtual paddock on the neckbands with a time for when that should turn on. So let's say if we want this virtual fence to turn on at 7 o'clock in the morning, the system will send that information to the neckbands well in advance. And at 7 o'clock in the morning the next day, then all of the neckbands will transition to that new virtual fence immediately, and they have access to that fresh pasture. So with a little bit of management and pre-planning, you can really optimize your grazing this way, and that allows you to do some very intensive pasture allocation where you could be doing this as frequently as every few hours, right? If that's what you want to do. And we do have some customers that are doing that. I think one of our good customers that's been on many webinars in the past, Ken Rochester, I think he shifts his virtual fences every few hours, right? I think 2 or 3 hours. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, that's right. And I've got some slides later on to go through that, Zippo.
Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, that's a feature that's really helped those customers that are doing that intensive grazing. And then there are some other changes that are coming in as well that will assist with that pasture allocation. So it's very easy now to start to see how much fresh pasture you're allocating to the animals as well, which gives you, again, a better way to plan for your pasture utilisation. And this is really useful for customers that may be using our Strongbow platform already, where they're getting the live weight updates from their animals. They know how much weight what their weight targets are using the Strongbow system. And again, they can then allocate the right amount of pasture per the right amount of time frame for those animals. So that's going to be a really important feature for them as well. What else can we talk about?
So, Zippo, I think comms is a really important point that you bring up around that offline VP scheduling. And I guess just to flesh it out a little bit more, let's just run through quickly a scenario where a farmer has a property where they have reasonably good phone coverage across their property using the LTE network from Telstra, but they've got some gullies and they've got some, little what we call comms shadows across their property. If we're to send that virtual paddock down through the offline VP scheduling feature, and those animals happen to be out of service, and apologies if you have already gone over this, Zippo, and those animals are completely out of comms when that moves on, will they receive that next virtual paddock?
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, let's consider one of these scenarios, and they're very common, right? There's hill country is in a lot of farming areas where they go in, animals do go down into a valley, and they're completely away from either cellular service or the service from our base stations, if they do have a system with a base station. And in those situations, right, again, you can pre-plan how you're dealing with situations like that. So if you've got a virtual paddock that is containing your animals, you ensure that your watering source is in a location that has some coverage. So you have some degree of confidence that animals will be coming into a service area during a 24-hour period, at which time they can receive instructions for the next virtual fence break, right? So absolutely, we can accommodate for those kind of scenarios as well, so that animals always do have some level of reception to the system and can make those virtual fence changes going forward. And then there are other features that are built into the system that if animals do remain completely outside of service as well, and we have no ability to communicate with their neckbands, there are some safeguards built into the system, like our timeout, emergency timeout, right? So this applies not only for times when if there was a complete interruption to the communication to a platform, the neckbands do have a built-in 24-hour timeout where after that period of no communication with the platform, they will deactivate the virtual fence, right? And that gives you a chance that, well, first of all, you'll be notified if that's the case, that there is a communication interruption and that you may need to take some action to contain your animals. But the other ability that we have now with that timeout is we can adjust it, right? So if you're on a very extensive property and you expect that some animals may be going well outside of the normal service area, we can extend that 24-hour timeout to be a longer period. It could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, depending on your operation, what makes sense for you before that emergency timeout kicks in. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we can now configure the platform to suit individuals' needs.
Yeah, perfect, Zippo. No, that's great. And if someone wants to go through a site assessment or connectivity assessment, what's the process?
Yep. So really, the first port of call, of course, is to discuss it with your eShepherd representative. You know, what we typically, what is really useful for us to make some of those site assessments is to have some digital maps of your property. So you can see here on this on the screen that I'm sharing, the white lines are the physical fences of the properties. Quite often, people already have these sorts of files that they can share with us, and they may come from some other platforms that they're already using. But if you don't have them, that's okay as well. We don't absolutely need them. It just means that, you know, these digital maps give us a really good indication of exactly where your property boundaries are. And then that allows us to make a really good assessment using some very nice online tools to see what the coverage is likely to be across that property. So, you know, there are already some very good coverage maps from the telco providers that can give us an indication of what your signal might be like, and that can determine whether you are suitable to use the direct to cellular communication part of the system, or whether you may need to go down the route of using the LoRa base stations that are located on your property to provide that local communication coverage. So, and again, then we can use a desktop tool to really assess how many base stations you may need on a property to be able to have full coverage.
Perfect. That's great, Zippo. And I guess the last thing before we switch over to have a look at Kent's operation in terms of our support, like I think, Zippo, we've both seen over time our support become really strong. We've got lots of training material that you're working on all the time. I guess just from a support perspective, what things have we got in place to help our customers?
Yeah, that's you know, continuous evolution there of our support structure, as you've mentioned, and it has grown a lot in recent times. So we continue to increase the number of team members that are supporting us as well. But we've now also got tools in place to allow anyone from our team, from our very global team now that, you know, spread across New Zealand, Australia, the US and Europe, to all be able to answer customer questions at any time of the day, right? We also have a phone support system that again reaches out to any operator that is online at the time, which with a global team, that brings that benefit of having, you know, almost 24/7 coverage for the phone number. So that's continues to improve as we get, you know, bigger and bigger as well. So support is really good. We have some in-app support as well, both on the web app and on the mobile phone. So these are you know, dialogue that you can bring up immediately and start asking questions. These questions can either be answered by an AI agent, which is drawing on the information that is in our help center and can provide some really good support immediately. But those questions also are visible to live agents, like some real people, and we can jump in there and provide some additional support if required.
Excellent. We love real people, Zippo.
Oh, yeah.
Not fake IA, Zippo, all the time.
No,
right,
no,
excellent.
That's right. Look, it's interesting, you know, because of course, as we expand and bring on more and more customers so quickly, we are looking to use some of the best tools, and these AI agents, while yes, they can be a little bit of a frustration at times, they are very effective at providing some immediate answers straight away. So it is definitely a useful tool, and we have seen some great assistance to customers using that. So don't dismiss it, but yeah, absolutely, we understand. You know, sometimes you need to speak to a real human, and we're there for that as well, for sure.
Excellent, thanks, Zippo. That's great. All right, now we're going to switch across and talk a little bit more about Kent Rochester's operation. So Kent Rochester has been an eShepherd customer for about 20 months now. Like most customers, Kent started with 50 neckbands on his operation near Albany in Western Australia. and we've seen the evolution of Kent's operation evolve quite rapidly. So like most people, they like to try a portion of their herd. Say, for example, if someone's running 300 to 400 breeders, we'll generally see someone adopt virtual fencing, the eShepherd, for between 60 and 100. Of course, you can buy more, but essentially people like to try the technology, right? They like to see how it works on their property. They like to see how their animals react to the virtual fencing, and I guess sort of understand how it's going to return some value in terms of, return on investment and some management benefits, maybe some labour saving benefits. So with Kent's operation going from 50, Kent is now farm wide on his trading operation just north of Albany. He's got around 1,200 neckbands on farm. I've been to see Kent a number of times over the last couple of years, and it's been really great to see his operation improve on a number of different levels. So hopefully you can see my slide there, KM Farms. So just to run through, I guess, the numbers a little bit and talk about how Kent's improved his beef operation and how he's actually getting those gains. So if you're a trading operation, or you do like to fatten or background your own weaners, it's all about pasture utilisation, right? So for example, in Kent's operation, he's buying in animals around that 350 kilo mark, okay, and he's taking them out to about that 600 kilo slaughter weight for some different markets that he's selling into. And his average daily gain before or pre-virtual fencing was around that 1.2 kilos per animal per day, right? So a lot of people would say, you know what, that's actually quite, good daily gain. And Kent was achieving this by breaking his farm up into 10 and 20 hectare cells. And for a lot of people looking at rotational grazing practices, for people who are, have attended the RCS courses and other, I guess, training programs to look at pasture utilisation and weight gain, most people would say, okay, that's pretty standard. Even in the high rainfall, high intensive environments, 10 hectares is quite a small paddock. What we're seeing with Kent, and I'll touch on this in a minute, by being able to reduce those paddock sizes, he's now achieving an average of 1.8 kilos average daily gain per animal. And he's simply doing this by the intensive grazing management structure on his property. Now, if you work that back to a production point of view, right, because we understand, yes, there's an investment in virtual fencing, and yes, you might be thinking about breaking your farm up into smaller cells, utilising that grass a lot better. With a 0.6 kilo per animal per day on a $4.50 feeder steer price, it equates to about $2.70 per day of extra gain, or $18, $19 a week. So essentially we can look at this gain and we can say, okay, with a $350 purchase price outright for our neckband, we're essentially paying that neckband off in about 5 months, okay? So it allows us to run more animals. And talking to Kent, he believes that his pasture utilisation is around 20% better, okay? So he's not buying any more country. He's simply using the grass that he has available more efficiently, and essentially achieving those better weight gains. And this is all measured through in-paddock weighers, okay? So Kent knows every day how his animals are performing. That can be affected also by the weather, by water quality, and by how large those paddocks have been allocated to those animals. So all these things actually play into that daily gain, and being able to measure that daily gives Kent and others the ability to essentially understand how long animals need to be on a certain paddock, okay? And as Zippo spoke about before, Kent's doing quite a lot of moves per day, which I'll talk about in a second. But this is a representation of his existing paddocks prior to virtual fencing. So you can see this pink shaded area here is the paddock that I'm actually talking about. It's 11.47 hectares. You can just see the watering point there and another watering point there. And essentially, if you look over to the right-hand side here, that virtual paddock there is now broken up into cells of 1.38 hectares. And Kent is wagon wheel grazing those paddocks around that watering point. So, we understand that a lot of people in their beef operations are somewhat limited by the watering points, being in a dam, a trough or a creek. Okay, so in this scenario here, we're essentially not grazing animals over old ground or new ground frequently. We're only giving them short grazes with frequent moves. And just to touch on that a little bit more, if you look at this next slide here, this paddock of lush green ryegrass and clover, which I actually took that photo back in November of last year when things were looking really great in Albany. There's 150 animals in this particular paddock, and then this paddock is 10 hectares in size. So Kent was working on a 10-day rotation. Okay, so essentially those animals, those 150 animals, get 1 hectare per day, and they get 5 moves a day between the hours of 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. So the system is designed to pre-schedule those moves, as if I spoke about before. So we can actually punch in, draw the paddocks and punch in those moves ahead of time. So we're somewhat automating our grazing. Okay, we're taking it from manually having to move them to then being able to do it on the platform, to now actually being able to schedule those moves ahead of time. And every 2.5 hours, those animals are getting 0.2 of a hectare, which means that the rest of the paddock's not getting trampled on. It means that the animals aren't walking that paddock continuously looking for fresh feed. Okay, so they're not burning off that condition, and they're getting a nice long rest overnight. Now, again, these animals are being monitored by the in-paddock weigher, and if Kent finds that they're not doing as well, he might speed up those breaks, or he might actually make those paddocks a little bit larger to accommodate the stocking density of that particular paddock. So that's a really great example of where intensifying the grazing, growing the same amount of grass, but just using it in a lot better way is proving to be, really profitable for Kent, and he's able to turn off more animals throughout the year because of that process. All right, I'll just move on now a little bit and talk about breeder and cow-calf operations. This is an absolute common question we get all the time. So our neckband is designed to go on an animal which weighs 200 kilos or more. Okay, that's our recommendation. And we do see the adoption of breeding stock quite common now in Australia and overseas, simply because people still want to have the same rotational grazing benefits in their breeder herd as they do their trading animals or their animals that they're backgrounding. Okay, so we're not putting a neckband on the calf until essentially that calf is weaned. Okay, and then once that calf is weaned, we can put a neckband on that, separate it from mum, and essentially grow that animal out to the desired weight. So in this particular scenario here, we've got some cows with young calves at foot. Generally, when they're calving, we would treat that mob similar to how we would treat that calving mob in a traditional fencing scenario, right? So we don't want to contain mum to a small area. We want to allow the cow to go off and have that calf, but essentially she can still have the neckband on. We might just turn that virtual fence off or have a larger virtual fence for that mob. And then once that calf gets up and running, okay, we can start to narrow and shrink those paddock sizes to then start to rotate our breeding cows around the paddocks, okay, for grass utilisation. If we're in a quite lean season, we might make those paddocks a little larger. If we're finding that the cows, which is what I witnessed in WA recently, that the cows are doing quite well, they're almost a little bit too conditioned, we might pull those paddock sizes down a little bit smaller, or we might just broaden those moves between those schedule shifts out a little bit more. So we can actually start to manipulate the condition of the animal. The great thing is the calves get to go out and creep graze, right? So we all have probably done creep grazing where we've got, the creep feeder, we've got calves going in getting some pellets because we really want to push them along. This is the same principle, right? Without the electric fence, without the feeder in the paddock, we're allowing, as those rumens develop in those young calves, those calves are going off, they're creep grazing. We do find that the calves sometimes initially will hang on the virtual fence line a little bit, but essentially those calves are always coming back, right? Because they're coming back to getting a drink. And one of the other great benefits we're seeing is as those calves develop, they tend to self-wean a little bit, right? Because they're becoming so independent from mum, and mum's in the virtual paddock, and the calf gets to essentially wander out further and further into a point where we can decide to wean those calves off those cows, and that process is a little bit simpler. Now, in terms of performance, we're seeing calves over winter grazing periods over many different farms are weaning around that 40 to 50, 55 kilos heavier over that same period, essentially because the calves have got first chop at the fresh grass. So that's a really great example where a cow-calf scenario would work really well. That leads me into also talking about bulls. Okay, so bulls is a question that we get asked almost every single sales call. People are saying, can I put the neck bands on bulls? How successful are we at containing bulls? So firstly on that question, yes, absolutely we can do bulls. We love seeing neck bands on bulls. If they're over 2-year-old or over sort of 700 to 800 kilos, we do sell extension chain kits. Okay, I think they're $16 each, and we can essentially fit those bigger necked older bulls with the virtual fencing neck bands. And the great thing about them, of course, we can start to eliminate some of those problems that we're seeing in a scenario where there's bulls and there's maybe cycling cows nearby, but we want to contain some bulls and other bulls we want to put in that mob. So it really takes a lot of the issue around bulls fighting, bulls smashing fences down. And we have got customers now starting to pull bulls out of a mob using the virtual fencing system. Essentially, we can overlay a bull virtual paddock on top of a breeder virtual paddock. So you can actually have two virtual paddocks overlaying one another, but two different mobs, right? So you'll have your breeders in one mob and you can have your bulls in another. You can also have multiple mobs feeding into a single watering point as well if you want to separate animals or you want to maybe separate bulls. And it's funny, the questions you get from people say, can I have a bull paddock for every single bull on my farm as long as I've got access to water? I mean, essentially the answer is yes, right? You can have as many virtual paddocks as you like. So yeah, a really great application both in breeding and on your bulls as well. I will talk a little bit about containment as well, because that does come up when we're talking about containing bulls or containing any animals. So how our system works in terms of containing animals when the animal approaches that virtual fence and gets that 5-second audio to cue the animal that it has approached the virtual fence. If the animal ignores it, it does get a mild 1-second pulse, okay, and then that continues to happen in series for a short amount of series until that animal is then contained. For whatever reason, if that animal does push the boundaries and does break out of that virtual paddock, initially when you become a customer, there's three things that can happen, right? The first is you can allow that animal to move back into the virtual paddock. The second thing is you can push that animal back in if you find that it is wandering. And the third is, once you're an eShepherd customer for a number of weeks, you can have a discussion with your eShepherd team to talk about implementing the return to paddock feature. And that basically, once switched on, we can actually select by animal which animals in your breeding herd, your trading herd, or your bulls get that feature activated for that animal, because essentially you mightn't want that on all of your animals. You may just want it on select animals that have pushed the boundaries. We've all got that cow on our farm who continually likes to smash down fences and escape, or you might have some bulls that are really pushing the boundaries. So that's a discussion we have once we're up and running and we're a number of weeks as a eShepherd customer. I think I've pretty much covered a lot there, Zippo. You look like you've got something to add.
Oh, look, yeah, I was just going to add to this part of the conversation around containment. It's, yeah, you've absolutely nailed it. Interestingly, the bulls tend to respond really well to the pulses. I think they're a little bit more sensitive, it turns out. Like sometimes we think, oh, bulls will just break through anything. And look, when there are cows in heat that are nearby, then yes, the containment is hugely challenging, as anyone will be aware. But for the most part, bulls respond really well when they are on their own. So it's great. And yes, that return to paddock feature, we find that it is really only required for some of the animals that exhibit that sort of behavior. We've just recently dealt with one customer where a cow was very hell-bent on breaking through the fence and going into a different area. It was actually going into their veggie patch as well and causing havoc. And for that animal, we've turned on the return to paddock feature, which really just means that the system will try and bring that animal back inside the virtual paddock by delivering some more stimulus. And they very quickly learn to that, hey, okay, there's no easy way to get out of the virtual fence, and they will be contained. So no, there's some good features there.
And that leads nicely, Zippo, into talking about training. So a lot of people say, okay, that's fair enough. I can learn virtual fencing. I'm a human. How are my animals going to respond? This is new technology for them. What's the training process look like? Is it difficult? How quickly can I then take my animals out onto, the broader grazing areas on my farm? It's a fair question, right? So once you become a customer, you fit the neck bands to the animals. I'm going to show you an example here of a mob of heifers, which I personally fitted with one of our New South Wales customers, Jared Doyle at Tamworth. So once we fitted a couple of different mobs, we took these animals out into their training paddock. Okay, so I've just got to work out how I play this video. I think that's playing now. So the animals have come out of the yard, they've had a drink, and then essentially they've walked out. Okay, and what we've done, we've chopped off the end of the paddock with a virtual fence line, and you can see the very first interaction there. They've got some audio, maybe they've got the odd stimulus. And you can see that the lead of those animals, there's probably only 3 or 4 animals that essentially would have run into that virtual fence line, but that herd mentality's kicked in. All the animals have gone, great. If you're out of there, I'm out of there too. So that is typically what we see almost every single time in the training scenario. We would have a rectangular or a square paddock with 3 of those sides being physical. We can then overlay the virtual fence line on top of the physical sides and then essentially break that paddock down to a smaller area where those animals are going to get some interaction. As we walk the animals through that process in the first couple of days, then we can start to maybe bring that line in a little bit closer, or even shrink that paddock a little bit, or maybe bring those virtual fence lines off the physical closer to the animals. And then what that does, that just gives those animals even more interaction with the virtual fence. Okay, and we actually have a little marker or a little measurement tool on the platform called the audio ratio. Okay, and how that works, once an animal interacts with the virtual paddock, gets an audio, doesn't get stimulus, because essentially that animal recognizes that it can't walk any further, otherwise it will get the stimulus, their audio ratio climbs. And what we're looking for as a rough baseline is 80% of our animals have an audio ratio of 80% or more. Now that process, we say, generally takes about 7 days to train an animal, but essentially what we're seeing in the real world is animals are responding very well in that 1 to 3 days. So we are very confident that once those animals go through that 7-day period, that you're pretty much right to take them out into their broader grazing areas. And a lot of people still use maybe 1 or 2 physical sides to their paddocks. So essentially, if animals are in a 100-hectare paddock, they might be in the corner. They might have a laneway down the side of that paddock with strip grazing, as you saw in that example on the platform before. I guess the eShepherd system is really only limited to your imagination of how you want to graze your paddocks. If you're wagon wheeling round a watering point, if you're strip grazing post-harvest stubbles in line with your tram lines in a cropping operation, if you're bringing animals down through waterways and excluding areas, we can do that also. There's lots of different ways to graze, and that's the great thing about eShepherd. That's the great thing about virtual fencing, is that it adapts to your operation. Okay, it's really going to be tailored to your watering points, your pasture availability, your stocking density, your class of animals, and what your grazing goals are. So, and the other great thing is this technology, you can roll out overnight. Once you make that decision to become a customer and adopt virtual fencing, even in a trial sense of those 60 or 100 animals, you can essentially apply all these principles of intensive grazing management and rotationally grazing principles literally overnight. So that's pretty cool. All right, I think we've spoken enough. Sorry, Zippo.
I was just going to again jump in there and mention that yes, over so many customers that have come on board now globally. That training for the animals has been extremely effective, and no situation or scenario is exactly the same. We totally see that there are so many different paddock shapes or different circumstances that occur during that training. Or we haven't yet found animals that could not learn the virtual fencing system, right? They do all adapt to it. They in some situations it may take a little bit longer because we've had to keep virtual paddocks quite large during the training period just because of the feed availability. And in those situations, right, maybe it takes a bit longer for all of them to have interacted with the virtual fence and understood it. But they all figure it out, and they all end up, respecting it and only listening to the audio tones. So it's, one of the things that still gets me very excited is having a look at where animals are getting those audio tones, and you can see they're just getting audio tones, and no pulses are being delivered at all because they just respond to the noise. So that's really the holy grail of this technology, and great to see.
All right. So I think we have Grant Lewine joining us. Can you hear us, Grant?
Yes, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Grant. So I'll just make an introduction. So thank you very much, Grant, for coming on today. Grant is has a mixed farming operation in northern New South Wales, in the Bladder area. So Grant became a customer pretty much as soon as legislation allowed, and he was really keen to adopt the technology. So Grant, firstly, again, thanks for coming on today. Can you just give us a quick sort of overview of your operation? You're mainly cropping focused, but you are running some cows on your farm at Bladder. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I am mainly a broadacre farmer. So about 20 years ago, we pulled down just about every fence on our farm. So we are not a lot of fencing here, and we've been slowly putting them up. But I've always been interested in getting e-collars because we have a lot of country around creeks that always get flooded and fences get washed away. So we've never worried about fencing it, but I have unutilised land just sitting there full of, obviously grass because it's where all the water runs, and never being able to actually utilise it. So I rang Mark. I've been ringing for ages, waiting for legislation to go through. And then once it came through, we jumped on board. I bought 40 to start with just to make sure it was going to work, because like anything, you don't want to rush in and it not work. And now I've been talking to him about trying to get a few more, because I've got them on 40 weaners. They've been on it, I can't actually tell you how long. I think 7 weeks now, 6 weeks.
Yes, 7 or 8 weeks. Yeah, I think January you fitted animals.
Yeah, and I fitted them on a Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were in a holding paddock that had already been chewed out. So I let them out 7 o'clock the next morning, and they've been good. I've had one escapee, and that we think was a poacher dog, like a pig chasing dog, chased it out early one morning. And other than that, they've been a hit. They've been very quick to respond.
I think you're in Brisbane when that happened, Grant. You rang me. I think that was a Sunday morning, wasn't it? You rang me and said,
Yeah, I was in Brisbane.
I think there's an error with your system. I'm like, oh dear. So we jumped on the platform and had a look, and sure enough, that animal had actually been hunted out of its paddock and been pushed through the virtual fence at speed, and ended up, I think it was nearly 10 kilometres away, which was quite extraordinary, really. So, in a scenario where Grant lives, where some of the fences aren't crash hot because it is predominantly farming country, we were able to alert Grant's staff to essentially go and muster that animal, bring that animal back to where it's supposed to be.
It actually came back 2 days later and put itself back into the paddock. So it ran, I think it was 10 k's away, and 2 days later it wandered itself back in and put itself back into the virtual fence. And it's, like I say, it's been good. But I'm still learning how to use the fences and that and get the most out of it. But for us, it's been easy to use. And like I say, when I lost the animal, I didn't have to go looking for it. I just rang the neighbour and said, look, there's one of my weaners over there. And he said, no, it'll be fine. When you get to it, buddy come pick it up. And like I said, in the end, it put itself back in the paddock. Whereas I have another 40 weaners there this morning. Mark was ringing me, and I spent 2 hours trying to find them because they've got no e-collars on them. They were, at the moment, I've got trying to find a bit of feed everywhere. And like I said, I lost 2 hours just to trying to find the other ones. So there's just a quick thing there.
We happen to have a few spares in our warehouse, Grant, if we can help you out with that. So that's excellent, though. That's good. And I think you've got a couple of neighbours as well that have been looking at the technology for similar reasons. I know Doug up at Palomalo is the same thing. He's got a lot of waterways that essentially he's slashing, he's burning fuel and costing him time. So now he's got an opportunity to virtually fence those waterways, put a mobile trough solution in place. So again, just another really great application for the technology. And just to run through that sort of how the animals adapted quickly, I think you had that one escapee, but how well and how quickly did they, I guess, get used to the virtual fence?
Extremely well. Like I had Doug, who's actually bought them, he came over it would have been 7 days after fitting them. No fence. I was on the road. They walked up to us, about 20 of the animals, just slowly walking up to us, no fence. One of the collars just let a sound off, and they just all turned around and started walking back into the paddock. And he said, that'll do me, and he went and ordered some.
Cool. No, that's great. Well, and you're an adopter of technology anyway, aren't you, Grant? I mean, you've got the Swarm robotic sprayer on your farm. So
yes,
how's technology in general helped you?
Yes, we're a big fan of it. Just about all our machines are all with technology. They're all the planners are. I've got everything you can do. It's I've got a robot. We are heavily into technology just to make my life easier because, as everyone knows, getting labour is very hard these days. So it makes it a lot easier for me, just technology making my life easier. And e-collars, like I say, just that one escaped. I didn't have to go looking for it because I knew where it was. And whereas, like I said this morning, I spent 2 hours trying to find a handful of weaners that he got away because they had no collars. I'm all for technology. It makes my life a lot easier, as long as, like everything, when it's working. It's only as good as the phone service and that, but it's been very good in my farming practices.
And how many times a day do you look at the app? Do you look at your animals?
When I first got it, I was looking quite well, but I reckon about 3 times a day now. I'm starting to not look at it as often. Before I was, every few hours just to see, checking on them. I had a bit of a play when you first get it, like everything, sorting them out and tried that. The next stage will be I'll try and run 2 lots of animals in one paddock and see if they will, like heifers and steers, just to see how it goes. That'll be the next stage. I'll have 2 virtual fences, heifers on one side, steers on the other, and see how it goes. I've also used it when I brought them into the yards. I closed the fence down, so I only had to muster 5 minutes worth overnight. So I just kept bringing them in slowly to the yards, the fence, and then, like I said, it took me 5 minutes to bring them in the morning.
Yeah, and we're definitely getting that question, can we use it as a mustering feature? Look, we're not promoting that, but we know we learn a lot from our customers, right? We see what they're doing successfully because essentially their neck bands are on animals in real time in the real world. So really great to hear there's a few labour saving benefits there, that mustering, cutting down that time, and it's all relative, right? Whether you're mustering them in a 50 hectare paddock or whether you're in a larger paddock, being able to trap animals around watering points some time in advance to cut down on mustering times, those animals are going to come into the yards a lot cooler, a lot happier and a lot less stressed because essentially they've almost grazed themselves without knowing it to the yards. But no, thanks very much, Grant. Great to hear that the system's working well. Thank you for joining us today. If anyone's got any questions for Grant, I'm sure Grant would be happy to answer those questions. I will flick across to the Q&A now, or the chat. Meg and Zippo, have we got any questions from our audience? Or if anyone's got a question, you can just simply hit the raise hand button and we'll unmute your microphone if you would like to ask a question.
We do have some questions, Mark. The first one is from John, and it's how long before can we have a collar on a calf under 200 kilos? So,
Yep. So at the moment, our current model is suitable for 200 kilos or more based on the size and based off the trial work we've done. So we don't have a timeline at the moment on any further development around the neckband. So yeah, for the moment, I guess it's 200 kilos or more. I don't know if you've got something to add to that, Zippo.
No, that's right. That's it. Of course, technology continues to evolve very rapidly. I'm sure that will be something that will become available in the future and will be compatible with the existing system. But yeah, it's certainly not something that's imminent.
Okay, I've got another question from Michael. I'll just unmute your microphone, Michael, and you'll be good to go. All right, Michael. Hang on.
Here we go. That's better.
Yeah.
My end.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah. So
You're coming through very quiet. If you're able to come a bit closer to the microphone.
For sure. Yeah. Hopefully that's a bit better. Can we hear?
That's all right.
That's
I
good.
can repeat the question.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's the first one that I had around about different animals. That was kind of answered just now by the weight in terms you can't use it under 200 kilos, because we were looking to do this with goats as well, more from a vegetation management perspective than a profit perspective. So I think that one's out of the question. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
So,
at
yes.
this stage, it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
at this stage, it's already out of the question. Right. And then also, so we're based here in South Australia, and also wondering about the animal welfare benchmarks that have to be met. One of our concerns around that, or things that might not fit, is that we've got several small properties, and what we're looking to do is, well, we're exploring this idea as to whether we can have animals distributed across both properties that are they're about 80 kilometres apart. So is there any issue in that? And on the animal welfare perspective, what proximity do you have to be to where those animals are if you're using this technology? Are there any things in that regard?
Right. Well, let me address the two parts of the question. So firstly, yes, you can certainly set up the platform in a way that allows you to manage animals in quite different locations. So there's a few ways that we can handle that. You can leave it all on the one property on eShepherd, so that you can see both of those mobs that you've got in distinctly separate locations. But sometimes there may be reasons to actually split that up and have them as independent properties altogether. We can handle that as well. So there's both ways of being able to do that. Right, we actually see this happening a lot, right? There are a lot of people that are now managing animals remotely, and they're finding this technology extremely useful to be able to see what their animals are up to when they're quite a distance away from those animals. The platform does send some alerts around where animals are, if they've escaped from the virtual fence, and if there's some other issues. And we continue to build on those features as well to be able to give more useful alerts to customers that are wanting to really monitor the health and well-being of their animals remotely. So that's absolutely a focus from our team as well, to continue to improve that. And really, from a welfare perspective, yes, there's no real requirement at this stage from legislators to say that you have to be within a certain distance from your animals when you're managing them remotely. Of course, right, normal animal husbandry practices are absolutely required, right? You can't just abandon your animals. You do need to have some eyes on them from time to time, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, is there anywhere that I can get information around those benchmarks for the animal welfare that have to be met for SA?
because that was mentioned earlier on, is that you can use it in South Australia now, conditional upon some things. Is there somewhere where I can find what those conditions are?
No, they haven't been publicised at the moment.
Right,
no, and there are some things that are going on at the moment here in Victoria as well to just complete that all of the requirements for virtual fencing here in Victoria. So I think in time maybe they will be publicised as well and be available through our help centre.
Yeah, okay, and you guys will email that out or something like that when that becomes clarified. Okay, and then finally also so we've got some land up at Basket Range in Adelaide Hills where we've got pretty patchy mobile reception. Now that might require base stations. Do those base stations require 240 volt connection, or how are they powered?
No, so the base stations are completely self-sufficient. So they have a solar panel and a battery. And they can be installed in remote locations for sure. Yep. And they're reasonably lightweight construction, deliberately so that they can be located up on a hill, which is typically the best place to have one, because that provides the best line of sight coverage of properties. That results in the best connectivity to your animals.
Yeah, so they rely on that line of sight. There's no sort of connection that's like slightly out of line of sight.
Oh yeah, there is. Look, they are radio signals, right? And they do reflect and bend over things. Line of sight is just the most simplest way of kind of giving an indication of what coverage you may have. But it is a bit more complex than that because, yes, it will be able to penetrate through some trees and over hills and into some gullies. But and that's why we use some desktop tools to be able to really make a good assessment of what that coverage will look like. And, as Mark mentioned earlier, during that early discussion with potential clients, that's the sort of stuff that we run through and share with them.
Yeah. Okay. And final question. I'll let someone else ask some questions as well. But also at that property, we don't get a lot of sunlight during winter time as well.
Yep.
Are those neck bands still going to be operational even in those lower light conditions?
Yeah. So, and it is one of the reasons that the neck band is the size that it is that it's designed to be able to operate all year round, even in low light conditions. So we do have relatively large solar panels on there and a significant amount of battery power in there to be able to ensure that it can continue operating all year round.
Yeah. Okay. And it'll give you so a bit of a warning if the batteries are getting quite low.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll pass it over to someone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. We've got a couple of minutes left here. I've got a question here from Darren Hickey. Thank you, Darren. Do cattle remember, in inverted commas, where the virtual fence was in the paddock? And does that affect moving virtual fences from one place to another, like strip grazing? Excellent question. So I guess when we're talking about moving animals around our farm, we really look at what's been done before, right? So I can... a lot of our customers are using the intensive grazing, strip grazing method. What we find is that animals actually are waiting at the virtual fence line for that next virtual paddock, because once they get into a rotation, they do essentially want to move into fresh grass all the time. They become very accustomed to moving quite frequently. I know, again, on Kent's operation, using his farm as an example, those animals will essentially become almost a little bit fussy because they will pick all the good stuff out and then they'll be waiting for that next virtual break. So in terms of virtual fence line, we rely on leaders in a mob that will continually walk that virtual fence line, waiting for that virtual fence line to drop so they can move into the next paddock. We then find the secondary part of the mob essentially follows those animals, and then that return to paddock feature also has a dual function where it will back fence any stragglers that try and move away from the new virtual paddock that they're destined for. So hopefully that answers your question, Darren.
And you could actually, I was just going to say, you could actually see that in the video, in the photo you sent earlier of Kent's farm, where the animals were sort of sitting there watching the fence line. They sort of knew where it was and now waiting for it to drop. So you could, they were fussy, essentially, what you were saying. And they're waiting for that new paddock.
And another part of Darren's question that he just sent was, can the units be immersed in water? And yes, they can be. They're completely waterproof. We do see this a lot where animals stand in a dam, the neckband is completely submerged in water, and they're fine with that.
Excellent. I think we've got time for one more question.
Barry has his hand up.
Barry, yep. I'll just go and unmute you, Barry. 2 seconds. There you go. Go for it, Barry.
I think, Barry, you might need to just make sure your microphone is on as well.
There we go. Hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, Barry.
All right. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed the presentation. One thing I'm interested in is, do you have any statistics on cattle that may have been hung up in any fallen timber? Cattle like a scratch, and I'll be concerned if we're losing one per year just because they've got hung up in some fallen timber around their collar.
Yeah, okay. I think in terms of actual statistics, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's very low of number of animals that actually get trapped by the neckband. What we have seen is some animals getting caught up on things, and the system has sent an alert, or it's been visible to the customer on the platform that an animal hasn't moved out of a certain location, and they've been able to go and check up on that animal. We've had a scenario where an animal's put its head through the fork of a tree, for example. The customer was alerted. He went out and checked on the animal that hadn't moved in a long time, and found that, yes, it had in fact caught itself in that in the fork off the tree, and was able to free that animal, right? So animals getting caught to their detriment is a very, very low occurrence. The neckband is designed to for the top strap to break at a certain force, and then they can free themselves if they really pull hard, and an animal can apply a good amount of force to them. So yeah, it's a very low rate of animals getting caught for a long time.
Excellent. All right. We're going to wrap it up there. I'm just going to answer one more question because I want to try and leave no stone unturned. We've got a question here from Karen Black. Thank you, Karen. Sorry. Yes, Karen, do you have any pictures of collars on bulls? Yes, we do have some pictures somewhere. We will dig those out for you. And what is the cost of the collars? So the collars or the neckbands are $350 plus GST per neckband, and that's a purchase outright. There is a 3-year warranty with the neckbands, and the expected lifespan is 7 to 10 years based on an accelerated life testing. Okay, so we put through these neckbands through some rigorous testing procedures in terms of temperature, drop tests, cement mixer tests, and all the internal componentry and the external hardware on the neckbands are very similar to what we use in a lot of our other technology. Okay, so the boards that are inside, the UV stabilizers within the plastics, the solar panels, a lot of that stuff we're using in a lot of our Energizer range. We've moved as a business across to lithium in a lot of our products now, lithium technology for the longevity of the actual battery, and also the life or the amount of capacity of that lithium technology. So we're very familiar. I guess we've been building stuff for a very long time, and we've designed the neckband to last that 7 to 10 years, including the battery as well. The other part of your question, Karen, is around heat detection and illness. Okay, so currently we don't have heat detection. We are all about containing animals and moving animals across your farm, very successfully being contained very well and moving those animals via the platform. In terms of what Zippo was talking about before, though, if an animal has gone down, is stuck for whatever reason, or it's got its head stuck in the tree, it's bogged in a dam, or it's calving, that animal non-movement alert, that AD alert, will kick in at around 2.5 hours. and you can manipulate those settings on the platform. So you'll see when an animal escapes, you can watch that animal, and you can also see if an animal has gone down for any period of time. So hopefully that answers those questions. Thank you very much to all the presenters, all the staff, all you guys. Thank you, Grant, for joining in at late notice and sharing your experience. We are potentially going to run more of these. We will look at more customer-focused webinars next time. But if you've got any further questions and you misplace our details, jump on the eShepherd Australia website. You'll find Tom, Meg, myself and Caitlin's details there. Reach out to any of us in your respective states. And yeah, if you are wanting to have a deeper conversation, if you want to do some connectivity assessment for your particular farm and work out what solution might be right for you, more than happy to have that chat. And that wraps it up today. Thanks again. You can rewatch the recording. It will be available in the eShepherd webinar library. We will provide that link in the wrap up of this webinar in the coming days. And as we did do a lot of these last year, which were very successful, you can go through and rewatch a lot of those wonderful webinars and share where customers are sharing some of those stories of what they're doing on their farm. So thanks again, guys. Lovely to have you, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you later.
See you guys.
See you guys. Thank you.